Well, the Supreme Court session wraps up next week, and it's already been action-packed. The justices, they've already ruled on a double jeopardy case, and that could impact Donald Trump's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort. They upheld a ruling that said a person can be tried in both federal and state courts for the same crime. That means if the president pardons Manafort, the state case can still proceed where Trump does not have pardon power. And in that case, interestingly, Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Neil Gorsuch were actually on the same side. Ginsburg, of course, liberal, Gorsuch, conservative. And in a racial gerrymandering case in Virginia, Clarence Thomas, he joined Gorsuch as they sided with the liberals in the court when they ruled that 11 state House districts were in fact racially gerrymandered. That's in violation of the Constitution. And there are still pivotal cases that are yet to be decided, but will be wrapped up by next week. That includes political gerrymandering cases in Maryland and North Carolina, and the controversial case that will decide whether or not the census can ask about citizenship. Garrett Epps, he joins me now. He's a professor of constitutional law at the University of Baltimore. He's also a contributing editor at The Atlantic. And Garrett, there's so much I want to unpack with you, not just the cases themselves, but with the new makeup of the court and the new players, and the idea of how activists versus precedent observing they are. So let's jump into it, and let's first start off with the census case. Explain to the folks at home what's at stake here, and what are you going to be looking for specifically beyond just the ruling, but what it'll tell you about the court and how they view that.
The census case combined with the political gerrymandering case will decide in many ways who exercises political power in this country for at least the next 10 years. Because congressional districts and electoral votes are distributed on the basis of the numbers counted in the census. The census is not supposed to count only citizens. It is supposed to count every person living in the United States, which includes citizens, legal immigrants, and undocumented immigrants, and representation is figured on that. The Trump administration wants to include a question on the census form that says, is the person filling out this form a citizen of the United States? Every expert consulted by the Census Department said this will produce a less accurate result because non-citizens, legal and illegal, may be tempted just to throw the form away rather than hand in a government form with their name on it saying they're not a citizen. The result would be, and we know this from Census Bureau estimates, that in essence, white people born in this country will be overcounted. They will receive more representation in Congress than they're entitled to. And cities and areas with high immigrant population will lose representation, will lose political power. So combine that with the question of whether state legislators have the power to redraw districts explicitly to keep themselves in power. And you can see that we have some real questions about the health of our democracy going forward, depending on how these cases are decided.
And again, I'll editorialize a little bit, but we don't have to divine motive here, means and actual evidence in terms of how these districts in the case of gerrymandering were divided, what the motives were behind the census. You have people on the record as saying what they were hoping to achieve. So my question is, with the makeup of this court and the players, we're going to learn a lot, aren't we, about just how partisan the court is. Obviously, people all bring in their personal baggages. They were selected for a reason and confirmed for a reason. I get all that. But do you have a sense yet, especially with a few of the new players, just how traditionalist or precedent respecting they'll be, rather how much they'll be on the activist side? Do you have an idea yet, especially with the Kavanaughs and the Gorsuches of the world, where they're going to fall on that front?
Well, as far as the census case, I think we're going to see whether this really is a Donald Trump court or whether it maintains some judicial independence, because in order to rule for the administration, they have to ignore a very extensive record of statements and documents showing that this question has been put into the census for political advantage of one party. They did ignore similar statements in the travel ban case last term, but this is even more flagrant. About precedent, I think we have pretty good sign that at least three or maybe four members of this court would like to take a look at some precedents from the past 50 years and move them in a more conservative direction, and they don't feel a great deal of hesitation about doing that. Justice Thomas just this week issued an opinion basically saying, I think that if I think an opinion is wrong, it ought to be overturned regardless of precedent, that we shouldn't consider any legal doctrine of stare decisis. Justice Kavanaugh has written in the past that a precedent should be overturned if it's egregiously wrong. Justice Gorsuch has shown a certain amount of impatience with a lot of precedent, and Justice Alito is ready to go in a number of areas too. So that leaves Chief Justice Roberts in the swing vote, and this is going to be put to the test less during this term than during the upcoming term, when we really will see some questions about such things as abortion and reproductive freedom. There is clearly an appetite on the part of the right part of the bench to cut back on the protection of abortion rights and contraceptive rights. And the question is, how far will they go, and will they get 5 votes?
Between this week and next, I think we're going to learn a lot about this new makeup of the court here, and obviously with some major implications now and in the next session as well. Garrett, thank you so much for a few minutes. I really appreciate it.
Enjoyed it.
You as well. All right, everybody. Of course, we're going to keep a close eye on the High Court. Now, tomorrow, we will take a closer look at one of the cases we talked about, the census case and the implications. When we come back, we'll wrap things up, so please stay with us.